They told you to be honest. That honesty builds trust. That openness brings connection. That if you just express your truth, the world will understand you. But what they didn't say is who benefits from that truth. Because the moment you open your mouth and show them your direction, your plan, your pain, you're no longer in control. You've handed over your coordinates. You've given away the battlefield map. You've invited people to aim. In a world addicted to perception, clarity becomes vulnerability. The truth you reveal becomes the tool they use to shape you. And that's the first lesson of the Cold Strategist. Never let people define you by what you disclose. Reveal too much and they stop seeing your value. They start calculating your cost. You don't need to lie. You just need to leave space. You speak, but not fully. You nod, but not deeply. You exist with the quiet tension of someone holding an ace behind their back. The powerful don't show their hands. They let you guess what game they're even playing. You don't owe the world your soul. You owe yourself the discipline to guard it. And that begins with this. Conceal your aim, hide your triggers, starve them of your strategy. Let them fill in the blanks. They'll always fill them with fear or fascination, and both will serve you better than the truth ever could. Machiavelli warned, "He who reveals his intention lays down his weapons before the war has begun." And that's exactly what most people do. They think being understood makes them safe. But in reality, being understood makes you targetable. The moment someone knows where you're heading, they don't cheer. They calculate. They start planting seeds of doubt, placing obstacles, recruiting allies to slow you down. Not because your goal is wrong, but because your goal reminds them of what they're not. That's why the Cold Strategist never walks in a straight line. You curve, you pause, you misdirect. You nod in agreement while your real path forks elsewhere. You say you're just learning, you say you're undecided. You say it's just an idea. Because if they knew it was the real thing, they'd move to stop it before it breathes. Your ambition, once visible, invites sabotage. But when you let them believe you're harmless, distracted, drifting, you gain time. And in power, time is the deadliest weapon. While they relax, you prepare. While they underestimate, you expand. While they talk, you study. Let them believe you're passive. They'll never see the empire rising beneath their feet. That's what Machiavelli understood. Appearance is everything. You appear agreeable, appear aimless, appear indifferent. But beneath the surface, you build in silence. And when they finally notice the truth, it won't be a confession. It'll be a coronation, one they never saw coming. Because the true strategist doesn't declare war, he smiles during peace and wins before the battle even begins. They tell you to open up, to be real, to share your feelings so others can understand you. But that's not compassion, that's a request for ammunition. Machiavelli understood the darker truth. Men are quicker to forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. In other words, people aren't wired for your pain. They're wired for what they can do with it. Every emotional confession becomes a lever. The moment you admit that something hurts you, you create a pressure point, and they will press it, not always maliciously, but instinctively. You say you're anxious, now they test your calm. You say you're lonely, now they disappear to watch you react. You say you fear failure, and suddenly silence becomes a punishment. The Cold Strategist never bleeds publicly. You bleed, yes, but in private. You cry in silence. You scream into locked rooms. You process without performance. Because if they can see your emotional map, they can chart your collapse. True power isn't in hiding your feelings. It's in mastering the frame around them. You might be breaking inside, but you walk like iron. You may be grieving, but your voice stays still. Not to be fake, but to be free. Vulnerability, when given to the wrong hands, is a key that unlocks your destruction. That's why you never hand it over casually. Let them assume you're unbothered. Let them believe you're always calm. And when life does shake you, you shake alone. Because when people cannot detect your emotional pressure points, they cannot play the game. You're unreadable. And unreadable means untouchable. In every room, alliances exist, visible and invisible. But only one kind is truly dangerous, the invisible ones. Machiavelli once said, "He who builds his foundation on the people builds in the air." Loyalty is fragile, And once your connections are on display, they become vulnerabilities, not strengths. Because anyone who sees your network can map your influence, and once they map it, they target it. They don't need to destroy you. They just need to corrupt the people around you. Whispers to your allies, doubt planted in your circle, subtle wedges between your name and your reputation. That's how empires fall, not by invasion, but by internal exposure. The cold strategist knows better. You treat loyalty like currency, exchanged in silence, not spent in public. You don't declare sides. You don't flaunt partnerships. You remain neutral, unreadable, courteous, even to your rivals. You give the same smile to enemies and friends. And in doing so, you become a ghost in the system. Let them ask, who is he with? Let them guess, debate, and miscalculate. The time they waste trying to label you is time you use to build. You must never be fully claimed. Your real alliances? Kept off stage. Your true confidants? Hidden in shadow. The cold strategist is never seen with the same hand twice. Because the moment they know who you listen to, they can influence what you hear. But if no one knows your allegiances, no one knows how to reach you, or how to ruin you. And that's power. Not isolation, but invisibility in connection. You're not alone. You're just untraceable. They ask you what drives you. It sounds innocent, curious, even flattering. But Machiavelli would have laughed, because behind every innocent question is a blueprint request. They don't want your story. They want your levers. Your motivation is not inspiration in this world, it's instruction. The moment you say, I want to make my father proud, they learn how to guilt you. You say, I just want to be seen, and now they control you with silence. You say, I'm chasing purpose, and they'll dangle false missions to keep you occupied. What you reveal becomes their remote control. That's why the cold strategist never hands over the switch. Your real ambition is sacred, protected, buried beneath layers of misdirection. You tell them you're exploring. You say, I'm just following curiosity. You shrug and say, I don't know yet. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, you're sharpening the edge of a legacy they can't even see forming. Because true power is never announced. It's detected too late. Machiavelli wrote, the ends justify the means, but what he meant was, protect the end at all costs. The more people know your why, the more they attempt to control your how. They'll use flattery to distract you, applause to slow you, validation to box you. And if that doesn't work, they'll mock your mission just enough to make you question it. That's why your goal must remain faceless. Not because it's weak, but because once it's visible, it becomes vulnerable. Let them see the tip of the iceberg, never the blueprint underneath. And one day, when you arrive, they won't say, I saw it coming. They'll whisper, how did we miss it? That is the mark of a true strategist, building momentum in silence while the world assumes you're standing still. Disgust is a signal, and in the wrong hands it's a trigger. The moment you show what offends you, you reveal the fastest path to your emotional collapse. Machiavelli warned, a prince should be like a beast, a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves. But the fox never snarls. It observes. The cold strategist understands this. When you openly express hatred, disdain, or frustration, you're not setting boundaries, you're mapping your emotional landmines. You say you hate being ignored, and now they weaponize silence. You say you despise liars, and now every manipulation comes wrapped in half-truths. You say someone disgusts you, and suddenly they hold the power to unbalance your composure with a single word. Why? Because what you hate controls you, and what controls you exposes you. That's why the strategist wears a face of stone. Not apathy, but mastery. You don't flinch, you don't react. You don't give your enemies the satisfaction of knowing they've touched a nerve. Because if they know what irritates you, they'll test it. Not in obvious ways, but with surgical precision. Little by little, whisper by whisper, until you explode, and they smile because now you've lost the frame. The cold strategist doesn't chase revenge, he withholds reaction. You never scream that someone's crossed the line. You quietly remove the line and walk away. Let them wonder what you felt. Let them question what you'll do. Mystery becomes the punishment, and the moment they realize you have no visible buttons, they'll stop trying to press them. You don't need to forgive your enemies. You just need to deny them access to your reaction. That's the real power. Control not over them, but over yourself. There's a reason seasoned negotiators never blink. It's not just confidence. It's concealment. The moment someone knows what you can't lose, they stop negotiating with you and start controlling you. Machiavelli taught, "He who builds upon what he cannot give up will be destroyed by it." And yet, most people declare their boundaries like confessions. I could never leave. This means everything to me. I'd sacrifice it all. They think it proves commitment, but it actually paints a target. The moment they know you won't walk away, they take steps closer, not to value you, but to test how far they can push. You say, "I'd never quit this job," and suddenly they underpay you with a smile. You say, "I'd never hurt them," and they start crossing lines just under the radar. The cold strategist never announces the hill he's willing to die on, because no hill is safe once declared. Your real sacrifices must remain unspoken. Your loyalty, masked in neutrality. Your limits, cloaked in ambiguity. When they ask, "How far would you go?" you respond, "As far as I need to, no more, no less." And when they test you, you respond not with explanations but with positioning. You delay, you disappear, you redirect. Never offer your sacrifice up front. Let them think you're replaceable. Let them think you're flexible. Let them believe they can push you further. Until suddenly they find a wall they didn't expect. That wall is silence. That wall is detachment. That wall is the strategy you built behind the illusion of devotion. Because in power, desperation is weakness, but mystery is leverage. You don't need to shout your worth, you just need to show you'll vanish and take your value with you. That's how a strategist never begs. He walks away before they ever think he would. This is the final veil, the one most people drop without realizing. What you think of yourself is the blueprint others use to shape how they treat you. Machiavelli warned, "Men rise from one ambition to another. First, they seek to secure themselves against attack. Then they attack others. And nothing invites attack faster than a self-image exposed. You say you're not confident? They won't encourage you, they'll reinforce the doubt. You say you feel unworthy? They won't uplift. They'll validate your weakness with silence. But if you say you believe in yourself, that you see your own greatness, the reaction isn't support, it's resistance. Because most people don't want to witness someone rise above their own self-doubt. It forces them to confront theirs. That's why the cold strategist never reveals his internal mirror. You don't tell them what you believe, you let them guess. You don't declare confidence, you move with calm. You don't demand value, you embody it. When they ask, "Do you think you're better?" you answer with, "I don't compare." When they ask, "Are you sure about this?" you respond, "I trust the process." Not out of arrogance, but out of control. Because once they label your mindset, they'll start trying to control it. Through praise, through ridicule, through silence. They'll poke at your pride to provoke proof. They'll press on your insecurities to trigger collapse. But if you remain unreadable, they remain reactive. And reactive people cannot lead. They only respond. So you don't let them define your worth. You don't chase reassurance. You remain still. Let them project. Let them wonder. Let them invent stories. Because those stories become their cage, not yours. The cold strategist builds his identity in private, not to hide, but to protect the only power that cannot be taken, self-possession. Silence is not the absence of words. It's the presence of weight. It's the art of tension. Machiavelli understood that men judge more by the eye than by the hand, meaning people don't fear what you say. They fear what they can't read. Silence creates that fear. It fills the room with projection. They wonder what you know. They question what you saw. They begin to second-guess what you might do, and in that doubt, your power multiplies. The cold strategist doesn't race to respond. He doesn't explain himself. He doesn't fill the silence. He lets it stretch. Because people raised on noise panic in quiet. They confess too much. They seek validation. They talk themselves into exposure. While you're calm, they're unraveling. You become a mirror, and in that reflection they see their own insecurity, not yours. That's why the strategist never declares war. He shifts, he delays, he repositions without warning. They feel it, but they can't name it. And that's the key. You're not threatening them, you're haunting them. Silence becomes your sword. You don't argue, you vanish. You don't beg, you reduce access. You don't react, you redirect outcomes behind closed doors. They won't know you moved until their position collapses. And even then, they won't blame you, because there was no explosion, only erosion. You didn't crush them, you outlasted them. That's the true correction, not punishment but distance, not noise but disappearance. Power isn't always loud. Sometimes it's the quiet presence no one dares to misread. When you reveal nothing, you become mythic. When they can't place you, they can't predict you, and what they can't predict, they can't defeat. That's the moment you stop playing by their rules and start rewriting them from within. Now you understand what separates the forgettable from the untouchable. It's not volume, it's not charisma, it's not even talent. It's discipline. The discipline to control what you reveal, when you reveal, and who you reveal it to. The cold strategist does not aim to impress. He aims to outlast. He doesn't declare his moves. He lets results speak in whispers. While others post every thought, explain every mood, bleed every weakness, you become the anomaly. You're visible to all, yet known by none. That's the power of invisibility in plain sight. You don't seek to be feared, you simply remove the blueprint others would use to break you. When they ask, what changed about him? The answer is silence. When they ask, what's he planning? The answer is mystery. And when they finally realize who you are, it's already too late. Because they didn't watch you rise. They only felt the weight of your presence when it was unignorable. That's what this code gives you. Distance without detachment, control without cruelty, dominance without display. You are no longer a person who can be defined in a sentence. You've become a force, unreadable, unshakable, inevitable. If you've made it this far, then this mindset is yours. You don't need permission to step into power, only the courage to shut the door on your old patterns. So remember this, conceal your intentions, master your reactions, weaponize your silence. And if you're ready to walk deeper into this philosophy, subscribe to the Cold Strategist. This isn't just content, it's your psychological edge. Leave a comment below with one truth you'll never reveal again, but say it like a strategist. Let them wonder what you really meant, because from this point on, you speak with purpose and reveal only what empowers.